Welcome back to English Talk Time, the place where you practice real English every single day, and today we're going to talk about one mistake that almost every English learner makes without even realizing it.
And the worst part is, this mistake feels like progress, it feels like you're learning, but it's actually slowing you down every single day.
You spend time studying, memorizing, watching lessons, and still when it's time to speak, something doesn't work.
You hesitate, you overthink, and you feel like your English is not improving as fast as it should.
That's because this one mistake is quietly blocking your fluency.
And once you fix it, everything becomes easier, faster, and more natural.
So in this episode, we're going to break it down clearly and show you what to do instead. Let's start with the mistake itself because this is where everything begins and the truth might surprise you.
The biggest mistake English learners make every single day is confusing studying with real progress.
You sit down, you open a lesson, you watch videos, you read grammar rules, you memorize new words, and at the end of that session you feel like you've done something important.
And that feeling is powerful because it gives you a sense of movement, like you're getting closer to fluency.
But later in the day when you try to speak, something doesn't match.
Someone asks you a simple question, or you want to express a basic idea, and suddenly everything feels slow.
Your mind starts searching for words, you try to build the sentence, and nothing comes out naturally.
And that creates confusion because you studied and you understand but you still can't speak easily.
So you start thinking maybe you need more vocabulary or stronger grammar.
And because of that you go back to studying even more.
More videos, more notes, more rules, and again it feels like progress.
But here's the truth you need to understand clearly: studying creates knowledge but speaking requires skill.
Knowledge and skill are not the same thing, and this is where most learners get stuck.
You can understand English very well but still not be able to use it naturally in real conversations.
The student mindset trains you to collect information, but fluency comes from using that information in real time.
And when you only study without using English, your brain becomes passive.
It becomes good at recognizing English but not producing it.
So when it's time to speak, your brain is not ready for that moment.
And this creates a gap between understanding and speaking.
The more you stay in study mode, the bigger that gap becomes.
That's why some people study for months or even years and still feel stuck.
Not because they are not trying, but because they are training the wrong system.
If your daily routine is only watching, reading, and memorizing, then your brain is not being trained to respond.
And speaking is all about response, not preparation.
Real conversations don't wait for you to think about grammar or translate perfectly.
You need to respond instantly and naturally.
And if you haven't practiced that, you will always feel slow.
So the mistake is not studying, the mistake is believing that studying alone is enough.
Because fluency is not built in silence, it is built in use.
And the moment you understand this, everything about your learning starts to change.
You stop chasing more information and start building real ability.
And that shift is where your true progress begins.
Now let's go deeper, because this mistake doesn't just slow your progress, it creates a cycle that quietly keeps you stuck for a long time.
And the most dangerous part is that this cycle feels normal and even productive.
It starts with good intention. You decide to improve your English and you begin studying regularly.
You watch lessons, learn grammar, and memorize vocabulary every day.
And each day you feel like you are improving because you are doing something.
But then comes the real test, which is a real conversation.
Someone speaks to you in English and you understand clearly.
But when it's your turn to respond, you hesitate.
Your brain starts searching for the right words and tries to build a sentence.
But it takes too long and the moment passes.
That moment creates frustration because your effort is not matching your ability.
You know you studied and learned something, but you still couldn't use it.
So what do you do next? You go back to studying.
More videos, more grammar, more vocabulary, because you believe the solution is more knowledge.
But the real problem is not lack of knowledge, it is lack of usage.
You are trying to fix a speaking problem with more information.
And that approach keeps the cycle going.
You study, you feel productive, you try to speak, you struggle, and then you return to studying again.
Over time, this cycle starts affecting your confidence.
Because you are working hard but not seeing real results in speaking.
You start thinking maybe English is too difficult or maybe you are not good at it.
But that belief is not true, the real issue is the method you are using.
You have been stuck in a loop that focuses on learning instead of performing.
Speaking English is not just about understanding, it is about reacting in real time.
And real-time reaction can only be built through practice, not just study.
If you never train your brain to respond quickly, it will always feel slow.
And the longer you stay in this cycle, the more comfortable you become with studying.
At the same time, you become uncomfortable with speaking.
And that creates a dangerous habit where you avoid speaking situations.
But avoidance never leads to improvement, only action does.
Growth happens when you speak even when you are not fully ready.
When you try, make mistakes, and continue anyway.
That is how your brain builds real speaking ability.
So if you want to break this cycle, you need to change your daily focus.
Instead of asking what you learned today, ask how you used English today.
Because the moment you shift from learning to using, everything changes.
The cycle breaks and real progress begins. Now that you clearly understand the cycle that keeps you stuck, this is the moment where everything can change, because awareness alone is not enough unless you make the right shift in your daily actions.
And this shift is simple to understand, but difficult to apply if you stay in your old habits, because it requires you to move from learning English to actually using English in real situations.
Most learners spend their time asking what they should study next, which topic they should learn, or which grammar rule they need to improve.
But that question keeps you inside the same cycle, because it focuses on input instead of output.
The real question that changes everything is much simpler, and it is this: how did you use English today?
Because your progress is not measured by how much information you collected, it is measured by how much you actually used.
When you start focusing on usage, your brain begins to develop a completely different skill set.
Instead of slowly analyzing language, your brain starts reacting to it.
And that reaction speed is what creates fluency, not perfect knowledge.
Let's make this very clear: you do not need perfect sentences to communicate effectively.
You need fast and natural responses, even if they are simple.
Because communication is about connection, not perfection.
And this is why someone with basic English but strong usage can speak more confidently than someone with advanced knowledge but no practice.
Because the second person trained their brain to understand, while the first person trained their brain to respond.
And responding is what matters in real conversations.
So from this point forward, you need to start creating small daily situations where you actively use English.
You don't need a perfect environment, you don't need a partner all the time, and you don't need long hours.
You just need consistency and intention in simple actions.
You can speak your thoughts out loud while you are alone.
You can describe what you see around you in simple English.
You can react to situations in your mind using English instead of your native language.
You can repeat sentences you hear, and try to say them naturally.
All of these small actions are training your brain to move from thinking slowly to responding quickly.
And every time you repeat these actions, your brain builds stronger connections.
Those connections are what allow you to speak without translating.
And that is where real progress begins to appear.
At first it may feel uncomfortable because you are not used to using English in this way.
But discomfort is part of the process because your brain is adapting to a new system.
The more you stay consistent, the easier it becomes.
What feels difficult today will feel normal tomorrow if you keep repeating it.
And over time, your brain stops treating English as something foreign.
It starts recognizing it as something familiar and natural.
And when something becomes familiar, your brain stops resisting it.
That is when your thinking becomes faster and your speaking becomes smoother.
This transformation does not happen overnight, but it happens steadily when you focus on the right actions.
And those actions are not complicated, they are simple but consistent.
So instead of trying to learn everything, focus on using what you already know.
Because what you already know is enough to start building fluency.
You do not need to wait until you feel ready.
You become ready by using English again and again.
And that is the shift that breaks the cycle completely.
The moment you move from learning to using, your progress becomes real.
Your thinking becomes quicker.
Your responses become more natural.
Your confidence begins to grow without forcing it.
And English stops feeling like a subject and starts feeling like a tool you use every day.
And that is the point where your journey truly begins. Now we need to go deeper into something that most learners do not talk about but feel every single day, because even when you understand everything we discussed, there is still something that stops you from applying it fully.
And that something is not a lack of knowledge or ability, it is a silent fear that controls your actions without you even noticing it.
This fear does not always appear as something obvious, it shows up as hesitation, as overthinking, as waiting for the right moment, and as the habit of staying quiet when you actually want to speak.
You tell yourself that you will speak later, that you need more time, that you need to prepare better, but in reality you are avoiding the moment where growth happens.
And the more you repeat this pattern, the stronger it becomes inside your brain.
Your brain starts learning that silence is safer than speaking, and over time this becomes your automatic response.
That is why even when you know what to say, you still hesitate, because your brain is trained to delay action.
And this is where many learners feel stuck, because they believe the problem is their English, when in reality the problem is their reaction.
Let's understand this clearly. Speaking a new language is not just a technical skill, it is also an emotional experience.
When you speak your native language, you feel comfortable, confident, and expressive because you are used to it.
But when you switch to English, everything feels different, your thoughts slow down, your sentences feel limited, and you become more aware of your mistakes.
And that awareness creates pressure, because you want to sound correct, you want to sound natural, and you don't want to make mistakes.
So instead of speaking freely, you start controlling yourself too much.
You think more, you hesitate more, and you speak less.
And this is how fear reduces your practice without you realizing it.
It does not stop you completely, but it slows you down enough to keep you from improving quickly.
And the longer you stay in this state, the more it affects your confidence.
Because every time you avoid speaking, you miss an opportunity to improve.
And missed opportunities create frustration over time.
You start feeling like you are trying but not progressing, like you are learning but not improving.
But the truth is, you are improving in knowledge but not in performance.
And performance only grows when you take action, even when it feels uncomfortable.
This is where you need to change your perspective completely.
Instead of seeing discomfort as something negative, you need to see it as a sign of progress.
Because every time you feel uncomfortable while speaking, it means your brain is working in a new way.
It means you are stepping outside your pattern and building a new one.
And that is exactly how growth happens.
So the goal is not to remove fear completely, because that takes time.
The goal is to act even when the fear is still there.
Because action weakens fear, while avoidance strengthens it.
The more you speak, the more your brain realizes that nothing bad happens.
And slowly, that fear loses its control over your behavior.
Let's make this very practical so you can apply it immediately.
The next time you have a chance to speak English, do not wait for a perfect sentence.
Do not wait until you feel fully ready.
Just say something simple and clear.
Even if it is not perfect, even if it feels basic, even if you are not confident.
Because that simple action is training your brain to respond instead of hesitate.
And every time you repeat this, the hesitation becomes smaller.
The fear becomes weaker.
And your confidence grows naturally without forcing it.
This is how you break the pattern that was holding you back.
Not by thinking more, but by acting more.
Not by waiting longer, but by starting sooner.
And over time, something powerful begins to happen.
Speaking no longer feels like a difficult task.
It starts to feel normal.
It starts to feel natural.
And that is the moment where your fear no longer controls you.
Instead, your actions start controlling your progress.
And that is the turning point where your fluency begins to grow faster than before. Now we reach the most important point of everything we've discussed, because this is where your entire journey changes direction, and this is not about learning more or practicing harder, this is about becoming a different type of person.
Because as long as you see yourself as someone who is learning English, your actions will always be limited by that identity. You will wait, you will prepare, and you will feel like you are not ready yet.
But the moment you change that identity, your behavior starts to change automatically, because identity controls actions more than motivation ever will.
Instead of saying, I am learning English, you begin to think, I am someone who uses English every day. and that small change creates a completely different mindset.
Learners focus on studying, but users focus on communicating.
Learners wait for the right time, but users create opportunities.
Learners try to avoid mistakes, but users accept them as part of the process.
And this difference is what separates slow progress from real fluency.
Let's go deeper into why this matters so much, because your brain always follows your identity.
If you believe you are still not ready, your brain will hesitate every time you try to speak.
If you believe you need more knowledge before speaking, your brain will keep delaying action.
But if you start seeing yourself as someone who already uses English, your brain starts acting differently.
You begin to speak more naturally, you think in English more often, and you stop overthinking every sentence.
And those small changes create a powerful chain reaction in your progress.
Because every time you act like a user, your brain strengthens that identity.
And the stronger that identity becomes, the less effort you need to keep going.
This is why consistency becomes easier over time, because you are no longer forcing yourself, you are simply being yourself.
And when something becomes part of who you are, you don't question it, you just do it naturally.
Let's make this very practical so you can start applying it immediately in your daily life.
From today, stop asking what you should study next and start asking where you can use English right now.
That one question will open your mind to opportunities you didn't notice before.
You can use English when you wake up by thinking about your plans.
You can use English when you walk by describing what you see around you.
You can use English when you are alone by speaking your thoughts out loud.
You can use English when you listen by repeating and interacting with what you hear.
And each of these moments is not just practice, it is proof that you are becoming someone who uses English daily.
And this is how your brain starts accepting English as a natural part of your life.
Not something separate, not something difficult, but something familiar and useful.
And when something becomes familiar, your brain stops resisting it.
That is when your thinking becomes faster without forcing it.
Your speaking becomes smoother without overthinking it.
And your confidence grows naturally without trying to build it artificially.
This transformation does not happen in one moment, it happens gradually through daily repetition.
That is why consistency is more important than intensity.
You do not need to do everything perfectly, you just need to keep showing up every day.
Even on days when you feel slow.
Even on days when you feel tired.
Even on days when you feel like nothing is changing.
Because in those moments, your brain is still working in the background.
It is still building connections, still adapting, still improving.
And then one day, something unexpected happens.
You find yourself in a real conversation.
And this time, you don't hesitate as much as before.
You don't translate every sentence.
You respond more naturally and more quickly.
And in that moment, you realize something important.
You are no longer the same person you were before.
You are no longer just learning English.
You are using it.
You are thinking in it.
You are communicating through it.
And that realization is powerful because it proves that your effort is working.
Not because you studied more, but because you changed your approach completely.
So from this point forward, remember this clearly.
You are not just building a language skill.
You are building a new way of thinking.
A new way of responding.
A new version of yourself.
And that version grows every single day you choose to use English instead of just studying it. Now we go even deeper into the final layer of this journey, because understanding the identity shift is powerful, but what truly transforms your English is what you do every single day after this realization.
And this is where most learners underestimate the process, because they expect fast results from short effort, but real fluency is built through something much more powerful than intensity.
It is built through consistency and repetition over time, what we can call the compound effect of daily actions.
The compound effect means that small actions repeated every day create results that are much bigger than they appear at the beginning.
At first, those actions feel simple and almost insignificant, speaking a few sentences, thinking in English for a few minutes, listening for a short time.
And because they feel small, many learners think they are not enough to create real change.
But the truth is, these small actions are exactly what builds fluency when they are repeated consistently.
Because your brain does not change from one big effort, it changes from repeated exposure and repeated usage.
Every time you use English, you strengthen a connection in your brain.
And every time you repeat that action, that connection becomes faster and more automatic.
Over time, those small connections become strong pathways that allow you to think and respond without effort.
And that is how fluency is built, not in one moment, but through hundreds of small moments combined together.
Let's understand this more clearly. Imagine improving just 1% every day.
That 1% feels small, almost unnoticeable at first.
But over weeks and months, those small improvements multiply into something powerful.
And suddenly, you are speaking faster, thinking more clearly, and understanding more naturally.
This is why consistency always wins over intensity.
Studying for many hours once in a while will not create the same result as using English every day, even for a short time.
Because your brain needs regular training, not occasional effort.
It needs to stay connected to the language daily so that it becomes familiar and natural.
And this is where discipline becomes more important than motivation.
Motivation can help you start, but discipline is what keeps you going when you don't feel like it.
There will be days when you feel tired, days when you feel slow, and days when you feel like you are not improving.
But those are the days that matter the most, because continuing on those days builds real strength.
Because fluency is not built when everything feels easy, it is built when you keep going even when it feels difficult.
And every time you continue despite that feeling, you are strengthening your habit.
And once that habit becomes strong, you no longer depend on motivation.
You simply use English as part of your daily life without thinking about it.
Let's make this even more practical so you can apply it immediately.
Instead of setting unrealistic goals, focus on simple daily actions that you can repeat consistently.
Speak a few sentences every day.
Think in English during small moments.
Listen to English regularly.
Repeat and interact with what you hear.
These actions may seem small, but they are powerful when combined over time.
Because repetition removes effort and familiarity creates speed.
The more familiar English becomes, the less your brain needs to think about it.
And when your brain stops thinking too much, your speaking becomes faster and more natural.
This is how the compound effect works in language learning.
Small actions repeated daily create automatic behavior.
And automatic behavior is what we call fluency.
So if you ever feel like your progress is slow, remember this.
Progress is happening even when you cannot see it immediately.
Your brain is adapting, building, and improving in the background.
And one day, that hidden progress becomes visible.
You respond faster.
You understand more easily.
You speak more naturally.
And that moment feels sudden, but it is actually the result of everything you have done consistently before.
So trust the process and stay consistent.
Because the small actions you take today are building your fluency for tomorrow.
And the more you repeat them, the stronger your English becomes.
Not through one big change, but through many small steps combined together.
And that is the true path to fluency.
Now we arrive at the final stage of this journey, and this is the part every learner is waiting for, the moment when everything starts to feel different, when English stops feeling like something you are trying to control and starts feeling like something that flows naturally.
This moment does not happen because of one lesson, one method, or one day of practice. It happens as the result of everything you have been doing consistently over time.
And what makes this stage special is that it often comes quietly, without warning, without a big announcement, just a simple moment where you realize something has changed.
You are in a conversation, and instead of searching for words, you respond more easily.
You hear English, and instead of translating, you understand directly.
You speak, and instead of overthinking, your sentences come out more naturally.
And in that moment, you notice something important.
You are no longer struggling in the same way as before.
That is the moment where your brain has finally adapted to the language.
Not perfectly, not completely, but enough for communication to feel real and natural.
And this is what fluency actually feels like, not perfection, not knowing every word, but being able to communicate without constant effort.
Many learners imagine fluency as something perfect, where they never make mistakes and always speak smoothly.
But in reality, fluency is much more practical than that.
It is the ability to express your thoughts clearly, even if your sentences are not perfect.
It is the ability to continue a conversation without stopping every few seconds to think.
It is the ability to understand and respond in real time.
And all of that comes from the process you have been building step by step.
From listening daily.
From thinking in English.
From speaking regularly.
From repeating and using the language again and again.
And this is why patience is such an important part of the journey.
Because the results you are looking for are not instant, but they are guaranteed if you stay consistent.
Every small action you took before this moment was preparing your brain for this stage.
Even the days when you felt slow.
Even the days when you felt stuck.
Even the days when you felt like nothing was working.
All of those days were part of the process.
And this is something you need to remember moving forward.
Because your journey does not end here, it continues.
There will still be moments where you feel challenged.
There will still be situations where you don't know certain words.
There will still be times when you hesitate.
But the difference now is that those moments will not stop you anymore.
Because your foundation is strong.
Your brain knows how to adapt.
Your confidence is no longer based on perfection.
It is based on experience.
And that is what makes your fluency stable and real.
Let's go even deeper into what happens at this stage.
You start enjoying the process more.
You feel less pressure to be perfect.
You focus more on communication than correctness.
And because of that, your speaking becomes more natural.
You also start noticing patterns more easily.
You pick up new words faster.
You understand different accents more clearly.
And your overall comprehension improves without extra effort.
This is because your brain is no longer resisting the language.
It has accepted English as part of your system.
And once that happens, learning becomes easier and faster.
Because now you are building on a strong foundation instead of starting from zero.
And this is the real reward of consistency.
Not just improvement but transformation.
You are no longer the person who struggles to speak.
You are someone who can communicate.
You are someone who can think in English.
You are someone who can use the language naturally.
And that is something you built step by step.
Through daily effort.
Through repetition.
Through persistence.
So from this point forward, remember this clearly.
Fluency is not a final destination.
It is an ongoing process.
A skill that keeps improving the more you use it.
And the more you continue using English in your daily life, the stronger it becomes.
So keep going.
Keep using English.
Keep building on what you have already created.
Because what you have now is not the end.
It is just the beginning of a much stronger version of your English.
If you've reached this point, that already says something powerful about you, because most people start learning but very few stay long enough to understand what truly matters.
And what you've learned today is not just about English, it's about changing the way you think, the way you act, and the way you approach growth every single day.
You don't need more information, you don't need more complicated methods, and you don't need to wait for the perfect moment to start.
What you need is simple and consistent action, using English daily in real situations, even if it feels small, even if it feels imperfect.
Because every time you use English, you are building something inside your mind that cannot be built through studying alone.
You are building speed, you are building confidence, and most importantly, you are building a natural connection with the language.
Some days will feel easy and smooth, and some days will feel slow and frustrating, but both are part of the same journey.
Because even when you feel like nothing is changing, your brain is still adapting, still building, still improving in ways you cannot immediately see.
And then one day, without warning, you will notice the difference.
You will respond faster.
You will think more clearly.
You will speak more naturally.
And in that moment, you will understand something important.
Your fluency did not come from studying more, it came from using English consistently.
So from today, stop waiting and start using.
Make English part of your daily life, part of your thoughts, and part of who you are becoming.
Even if it is simple.
Even if it is not perfect.
Just stay consistent.
because consistency is what turns effort into real fluency.
And before you go, we want to hear from you.
Where are you watching from and what time is it in your country right now?
Drop it in the comments, we read every single one.
And come back tomorrow because your English grows every single day you show up.
Keep going.
Keep speaking. Both, see you in the next episode of English Talk Time.